In 1992, a Tibetan Buddhist monk named Milarepa Chogtrul sat in deep meditation in a monastery in northern India, while neuroscientist Stephen LaBerge from Stanford University monitored his brain activity during sleep. What the instruments recorded that night would challenge fundamental assumptions about the relationship between consciousness, dreaming, and waking reality. While Milarepa slept in what appeared to be normal REM sleep, his brain showed unusual patterns of high-frequency gamma oscillations, typically associated only with peak waking awareness. Through prearranged eye movement signals detectable on the electrooculagram, Milarepa communicated from within the dream state that he was fully conscious, aware he was dreaming, and practicing meditation techniques inside the dream itself. For the Tibetan tradition, this was nothing remarkable. Monks had been practicing dream yoga for over 1,000 years, systematically training to maintain consciousness through the sleep cycle. But for Western neuroscience, this was revolutionary. It suggested that consciousness is not binary, not simply on during waking and off during sleep, but exists on a spectrum of states that can be voluntarily cultivated through training. If you're fascinated by the nature of consciousness and want to understand how ancient Tibetan practices reveal insights that modern science is only now beginning to confirm, subscribe now and activate notifications. You're about to discover what dream yoga teaches about the fundamental nature of awareness, how 2025 neuroscience has validated core claims of this tradition, and what this means for understanding consciousness itself. Before we continue, I want to be completely transparent with you. This video has been created with the support of artificial intelligence for narration and visual editing. However, all the research, the deep exploration of Tibetan Buddhist teachings, the curation of contemplative practices, the philosophical analysis, and the narrative structure are 100% dedicated human work. My commitment is to offer you quality content that is profound, authentic, and deeply rooted in the wisdom of Tibetan Buddhism. To understand what makes dream yoga so profound, we need to understand the Tibetan Buddhist concept of the bardos. Bardo is a Tibetan word meaning intermediate state or transitional period. The tradition identifies 6 bardos, 6 distinct phases of consciousness that together encompass the entire cycle of existence. The first bardo is the bardo of this life, your ordinary waking consciousness from birth until death. The second bardo is the bardo of dreaming, the state you enter every night when consciousness continues but takes on the fluid, symbolic qualities of dream experience. The third bardo is the bardo of meditation, deep meditative states where consciousness shifts into non-ordinary configurations. The fourth bardo is the bardo of dying, the process of dissolution that occurs as you transition from life to death. The fifth bardo is the bardo of dharmata, or luminosity, the experience of clear light consciousness that dawns at the moment of death. And the sixth bardo is the bardo of becoming, the intermediate state between death and rebirth where consciousness seeks a new embodiment. For Tibetan practitioners, these aren't just philosophical categories. They're lived experiential territories that can be explored, mapped, and ultimately mastered through systematic training. Dream yoga focuses specifically on the second bardo, the dream state, but with a recognition that has profound implications. The tradition teaches that all 6 bardos share fundamental structural similarities. The experiences in each bardo arise from mind, are dreamlike in nature even when they seem solid and real, and can be worked with through cultivated awareness. If you can learn to recognize the dreamlike nature of dreams and maintain awareness within them, you're training a capacity that applies to waking life, to deep meditation, and most importantly, to the dying process and the bardos that follow death. This is why dream yoga is not just about having interesting experiences during sleep. It's training for maintaining consciousness through the ultimate transition of death, and for recognizing the fundamental nature of mind itself, which Tibetan Buddhism calls rigpa, or pristine awareness. If this perspective on consciousness is continuous through multiple states rather than switching on and off challenges your assumptions, take a moment to like this video. Your engagement helps us reach others exploring the deep questions about the nature of awareness. The practice of dream yoga traditionally unfolds through 6 progressive stages that build specific capacities. The first stage is recognition, becoming aware that you're dreaming while in the dream state. This is what Western psychology calls lucid dreaming. the experience of knowing you're dreaming while the dream continues. But recognition in dream yoga goes deeper than the Western concept. It's not just knowing intellectually that you're dreaming. It's directly perceiving the dreamlike quality of experience, recognizing that everything appearing in the dream, including your dream body and dream self, is a mental construction with no independent existence. The training for developing recognition happens primarily during waking life. You practice reality testing throughout the day, repeatedly asking yourself, "Am I dreaming right now?" You examine your experience carefully. Does everything behave according to normal physical laws? Can you read text consistently? These checks train your mind to question the nature of experience, and that habit eventually transfers to the dream state. Additionally, you practice recognizing the dreamlike nature of waking reality itself. You observe how thoughts arise and dissolve like dream images. You notice how your perception of situations is colored by mental interpretation rather than being pure objective reality. You reflect on how the solid-seeming world is actually a construction of your sensory systems and conceptual mind, not fundamentally different in nature from a dream. This waking practice of seeing reality as dreamlike prepares the mind to recognize dreams as dreams. The key insight here is that waking reality and dreaming reality are both mental constructions, both equally dreamlike when examined closely. The only difference is that waking reality has more consistency and continuity because it's constrained by physical laws and shared with other beings. But its fundamental nature is not more real or solid than a dream. Both arise from mind, both lack independent existence, both are empty of intrinsic reality. The second stage of dream yoga is transformation, learning to alter dream content and environments consciously. Once you've achieved recognition and know you're dreaming, you discover that dream reality is far more malleable than waking reality. You can fly. You can walk through walls. You can transform objects with intention, changing a chair into a dog or manifesting entire landscapes. In Western lucid dreaming culture, this transformation capacity is often used for wish fulfillment. But in dream yoga, transformation is training for a specific spiritual capacity. You're learning experientially that appearances are not fixed, that what seems solid and real can be changed through shifts in mind. You're directly experiencing the emptiness of phenomena, their lack of independent fixed nature. The practice instructions are to systematically transform dream elements, starting with small objects and progressing to larger environmental changes. You practice transforming unpleasant dream scenarios into pleasant ones, and pleasant ones into unpleasant ones, training equanimity. You practice multiplying yourself into many bodies, then dissolving back into one, undermining the sense of a solid fixed self. You practice dissolving all dream appearances into empty space, then allowing them to re-emerge, observing how mind generates experience. Share this video with anyone fascinated by lucid dreaming who doesn't know that Tibetan Buddhism developed a comprehensive systematic approach to this phenomenon over 1,000 years ago. The third stage is realization, understanding the dreamlike nature of waking reality. This is where dream yoga reveals its deepest purpose. The point is not to master dream manipulation as an end in itself. The point is to transfer the insight gained in dreams back to waking life. When you've experienced repeatedly how dream reality is constructed by your mind, how solid-seeming dream objects are actually mental projections with no independent existence, you begin to apply that same analysis to waking experience. The fixed solid objects in your waking life, are they fundamentally different? They seem more stable, but neuroscience confirms that your experience of them is entirely constructed by your sensory systems and brain processes. The table you see is not the table as it exists independently. It's a mental construction generated by light waves hitting your retina, neural processing in multiple brain regions, and conceptual overlay that labels the experience table. Remove your perception and conceptual framework, and what remains? The practice at this stage is to maintain throughout waking life the same questioning awareness you cultivate in dreams. Is this experience I'm having now fundamentally real and solid? Or is it dreamlike, constructed, empty of inherent existence? When strong emotions arise, you observe them as you would observe dream emotions, recognizing them as temporary mental events rather than solid truths about reality. When you encounter difficult people or situations, you hold them more lightly, recognizing their dreamlike quality. This doesn't mean becoming detached or nihilistic. It means engaging fully with experience while understanding its actual nature, which creates psychological flexibility and reduces suffering. The fourth stage is meditation, practicing formal meditation techniques within the dream state. Advanced practitioners report being able to sit in meditation posture within a lucid dream and practice techniques like focused attention or analytical investigation of the nature of mind. This might sound pointless, but there are specific advantages. In the dream state, ordinary constraints of the physical body are absent. You can sit in perfect stillness without physical discomfort. Distractions from the external environment don't arise. More importantly, being able to maintain meditative awareness during sleep means you're training consciousness to remain continuous across states that normally interrupt it. Most people lose all awareness when they fall asleep. Dream yoga practitioners train to maintain an unbroken thread of awareness from waking through sleeping and back to waking. This is direct preparation for maintaining awareness through the transition of death, which Tibetan Buddhism teaches is structurally similar to falling asleep. The fifth stage is fearlessness, confronting and transforming challenging dream scenarios. Dreams often present frightening or threatening situations. In ordinary non-lucid dreams, you react with fear and avoidance. But in lucid dreams, once you recognize you're dreaming, you have an opportunity to work differently with fear. The practice is to deliberately seek out frightening dream elements and approach them with curiosity and compassion rather than fear. If a threatening figure appears, instead of fleeing, you move toward it. You might ask it what it wants, recognizing it as an aspect of your own mind. You might practice transforming it through compassion or dissolving it into empty space, demonstrating to yourself that it has no independent power. This practice has profound psychological benefits. Dreams often present material from the unconscious mind, fears and shadow elements that you suppress in waking life. By approaching these consciously in the dream state, you're engaging in a form of exposure therapy and integration. From the Tibetan perspective, you're training for the bardo states after death, which the tradition teaches will present appearances that can be terrifying if you don't recognize them as manifestations of your own mind. The sixth stage is integration, applying insights from dream yoga to waking life. The ultimate fruit of the practice is not special dream experiences, but a transformed relationship to all experience. Practitioners report that extensive dream yoga practice leads to spontaneous recognition throughout the day that waking experience has the same dreamlike quality as actual dreams. This is not a dissociative state. It's a clear recognition of the constructed, impermanent, and empty nature of experience while fully engaging with that experience. The integration stage also involves carrying the lucid, spacious awareness cultivated during lucid dreaming into waking hours. Consciousness becomes more flexible, more capable of shifting between states intentionally. The boundary between meditation and daily life becomes more permeable. If you haven't subscribed yet, click now to join a community exploring these profound practices that reveal the nature of consciousness through systematic training. Now let's examine what happened in 2025 that confirms what Tibetan Buddhism has taught for a millennium. In April 2025, researchers published the largest study to date on the brain activity patterns during lucid dreaming. Using data from multiple laboratories and rigorous processing, they identified distinct neural signatures that separate lucid dreaming from both ordinary REM sleep and waking consciousness. What they found was extraordinary. Lucid dreaming is not simply a mixture of sleep and waking. It's a unique state of consciousness with its own characteristic patterns. During lucid dreaming, the researchers observed significant increases in gamma-frequency brainwaves, particularly in the 30 to 36 Hz range, in right temporo-occipital regions, including the precuneus. Gamma waves are the fastest brain oscillations, typically associated with heightened awareness, focused attention, and integration of information across different brain regions. The precuneus is associated with self-referential thinking, autobiographical memory, and self-awareness. During lucid dreaming, this region shows increased activation, suggesting enhanced metacognitive awareness, the ability to think about one's own thinking. The researchers observed increased functional connectivity in alpha and gamma bands during lucid dreaming. Functional connectivity refers to how different brain regions communicate with each other. The increased connectivity suggests that lucid dreaming involves more widespread network engagement than ordinary dreaming. The lead researcher stated that this work offers a perspective that could challenge the traditional binary view of sleep and wakefulness. This scientific finding confirms what Tibetan dream yoga has always claimed, that consciousness is not binary, but exists in multiple states with different qualities and capabilities. The gamma wave activity is particularly significant because experienced meditators, particularly those practicing Tibetan Buddhist techniques, show dramatically increased gamma oscillations during deep meditation. Neuroscientist Richard Davidson's research on monks with tens of thousands of hours of practice found sustained gamma activity at levels never before recorded. The fact that lucid dreaming also shows increased gamma suggests that dream yoga practitioners are accessing during sleep the same neural states that advanced meditators access during waking meditation. This validates the Tibetan claim that meditative awareness can be maintained across different states of consciousness, including sleep. Another 2025 study confirmed that lucid dreamers have enhanced metacognitive abilities, not just during dreams but during waking life as well. Brain imaging of frequent lucid dreamers while awake showed increased connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and structures associated with high-level cognition. The researchers concluded that frequent lucid dreamers have relatively high capacity for metacognition and cognitive control. This aligns perfectly with the Tibetan understanding that dream yoga training develops general metacognitive capacity that transfers across states. You're not just learning to be aware in dreams. You're strengthening the fundamental capacity for reflective awareness that enhances all dimensions of mental life. Perhaps the most profound scientific confirmation relates to the Tibetan teaching about clear light consciousness. The tradition describes clear light as the most subtle level of mind, the fundamental luminous awareness that underlies all experience. This clear light is said to manifest most accessibly at 4 moments: during deep sleep, during orgasm, during sneezing, and at the moment of death. The dying process in Tibetan understanding involves a progressive dissolution of coarser levels of mind until only the clear light remains. Advanced practitioners train to recognize and rest in this clear light awareness, and dream yoga is one of the primary training methods. The clear light of sleep is described as having the same nature as the clear light of death, though it's subtler during sleep because most people immediately lose awareness when falling asleep. Dream yoga practitioners train to maintain awareness through the falling asleep process, through the dream state, and into deep, dreamless sleep, where they report accessing a state of luminous clarity with no conceptual content, only pure aware presence. This sounds mystical, except that recent research on lucid dreamers has documented something remarkable. Some experienced practitioners report not just lucid dreaming, but lucid deep sleep, maintaining awareness during slow-wave sleep when dreams don't typically occur. Preliminary studies suggest this involves a unique brain state with elements of both deep sleep and waking awareness coexisting. Researchers are cautious about interpreting these findings because they're at the edge of current understanding, but they confirm that states of consciousness described by contemplative traditions correlate with distinct, measurable brain activity patterns. This brings us to the connection between dream yoga and the Tibetan understanding of death. The tradition teaches that the process of falling asleep mirrors the process of dying. When you fall asleep, coarser levels of mental activity dissolve progressively. Sensory awareness fades. Conceptual thinking diminishes. Finally, you enter deep sleep, where according to the tradition, the clear light nature of mind manifests, though most people don't recognize it. When you die, a similar dissolution process occurs but more definitively. The elements of the body dissolve in sequence. Coarse consciousness dissolves into increasingly subtle levels. Eventually, you enter the clear light of death, a period that can last from minutes to days where your consciousness abides in this fundamental luminous awareness. If you recognize this state and rest in it with full awareness, the tradition teaches that liberation is possible at that moment, but most people don't recognize it. They black out during the dissolution process and regain awareness only in the bardo of becoming, where they're driven by karmic patterns toward a new rebirth. Dream yoga is training for death because the capacity to maintain awareness through falling asleep, through dreams, and into deep sleep is the same capacity needed to maintain awareness through the dying process and into the clear light of death. Every night you practice dying. Every morning you practice being reborn. If you can master the transitions of sleep, you're preparing to master the transition of death. This might sound like religious belief, except that neuroscience is now documenting that consciousness during sleep is far more continuous and trainable than previously thought. Research on lucid dreaming, on dream yoga practitioners, and on neural correlates of different sleep stages reveals that awareness can be maintained through transitions that normally interrupt it. Share this video with anyone interested in the science of consciousness, anyone curious about the relationship between meditation and sleep, anyone exploring what death might be like from a naturalistic perspective, informed by contemplative traditions. What are the practical implications for someone who isn't a Tibetan Buddhist monk? First, dream yoga offers a systematic method for developing lucid dreaming that appears more reliable than Western techniques alone. Research suggests that combining reality testing with the contemplative practice of recognizing the dreamlike nature of waking reality leads to higher rates of lucidity. Second, the practice develops metacognitive capacity that transfers to waking life. You become better at observing your own mental processes, catching habitual patterns, and exercising cognitive control. Third, regular lucid dreaming has been shown to reduce nightmare frequency. By learning to recognize nightmares as dreams and respond with curiosity rather than fear, you can transform your relationship to frightening dream content. This has applications for trauma treatment. Fourth, the practice offers a direct experiential avenue for investigating questions about the nature of consciousness, self, and reality. Rather than just thinking about these questions abstractly, you can conduct first-person experiments by observing your awareness during different states. Fifth, for those facing death, the Tibetan framework offers a perspective that's neither conventionally religious nor purely materialistic. It suggests that consciousness at death doesn't simply switch off, but goes through a process that can be worked with and prepared for. Whether you believe in literal rebirth or not, the practices for maintaining awareness through transitions and for approaching death with curiosity rather than fear have psychological benefits. The key insight that dream yoga offers is this: consciousness is not a single thing that's either present or absent. It's a spectrum of states, each with distinct qualities and capabilities. These states can be systematically explored and trained. The boundaries between them are more permeable than ordinary experience suggests. And the fundamental nature of awareness is always present, underlying all states, accessible to those who train to recognize it. Modern neuroscience is confirming the trainability of consciousness across states. The distinct brain signatures of lucid dreaming validate that practitioners aren't imagining their experiences. The increased gamma oscillations and enhanced functional connectivity demonstrate measurable neural changes. The enhanced metacognition in waking life shows that training in one state transfers to others. None of this proves the metaphysical claims about rebirth or karma, but it demonstrates that the phenomenological claims, the descriptions of what consciousness is like in different states and how it can be trained, are accurate. The maps provided by the tradition correspond to territories that neuroscience is now beginning to explore. What part of dream yoga most intrigues you? Have you experienced lucid dreams? And if so, how did they affect your sense of what consciousness is? Share your experiences and questions in the comments. The practice of dream yoga requires patience and consistency, often months before achieving first lucidity. But the payoff is access to a dimension of your own consciousness that remains hidden to most people, hours each night that shift from unconscious oblivion to opportunities for exploration and insight. For those interested in beginning, the foundational practice is simple though not easy. Throughout each day, repeatedly question whether you're dreaming. Look carefully at your environment for inconsistencies. Check whether you can breathe through your pinched nose. Simultaneously, cultivate the perspective that waking reality itself is dreamlike, impermanent, and constructed by mind. Before sleep, set a clear intention to recognize when you're dreaming. With consistent practice, recognition will eventually arise during a dream. Thank you for exploring this profound intersection of ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience with us. May this understanding of dream yoga open pathways to deeper awareness of the nature of mind, whether during dreams, during waking life, or during the ultimate transition of death. Share this with anyone fascinated by consciousness, anyone who has experienced lucid dreams and wants to understand their significance more deeply, anyone preparing for death and seeking perspectives that honor both scientific understanding and contemplative wisdom. What Tibetan Dream Yoga reveals about consciousness is not a belief to be accepted, but an invitation to explore the nature of your own awareness across all its states, to train capacities that remain dormant in most people, and to discover for yourself what lies beyond the ordinary binary of waking and sleeping.